in the old days, it was sacred when you were asked to service UN meetings, official meetings. Well, I lost sleep many nights to find interpreters for the following day because you must service the meeting. Now, if you don't have enough permanent staff, you do not recruit freelance because you have to save money. And then you tell people, sorry, cannot service your meeting with interpretation because we don't have interpreters. We're saving money for the organization. So that's how it changed. I'm really, some people say, oh, it's terrible. Our profession goes down the drain. It's true, but is it terrible? I don't know. It was getting almost impossible these days. You have to remember that when the UN was created, I think they had like 45 languages, right? And now there are 193, and everybody has to speak on one subject in the committee. So now they restrict people to usually it's 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So everybody talks very fast, and now they do it from their computer. So there is no text. So it is becoming impossible to do. So now if the AI can do a better job, I mean, it's the future in every field, basically. So be it in interpretation. But a lot of people are going to maybe not lose their job, but not being replaced when they're retired. No, it's definitely the end of a whole, editor, translator, interpreters being replaced by a machine. I'm French. I was born in Orléans in France, and I came to this country long time ago to learn English. First of all, to be an au pair, the family to learn English, and I liked it so much that I decided I wanted to come back. Well, I wanted to, learn English because in the professional life in France, I had a diploma of executive secretary, but you don't go very far if you don't know English. If you want to be the secretary of a big boss, you have to know English. So I thought, my parents said, why don't you go to England for 3 months to learn English properly? And I said, okay, I was looking, and then there was an ad in a paper of a family in New Jersey who wanted to have an au pair to take care of their children. So I said, oh, why don't I go to America to learn English? So my parents said, okay. I was supposed to go for 3 months, but I stayed for 1.5 years until my father got really mad and said, you're not going to spend your whole life taking care of children. Then I ran out of visa, so I came back. I came back to France, and I had only one idea, was to come back to the States. So I was looking to find a job, and 3 days after my return, actually I returned on April the 1st, and everybody thought it was April Fool's Day and I would never come back. But then I was looking for a job, and there was in Le Monde, the French newspaper, there was an ad for people to come to the UN to be in the typing pool, and I would do anything. So I applied, and I went to Paris at UNESCO to take a test. There were 104 girls, basically, taking the test. And out of 104, they took 3. They took me. So that's how I came back to the UN as a typist. And we're talking, I think, 1971. I was young and very happy, and America was such a big thing to come to, especially a young girl in France. So that's how it all started. I was not going to spend my whole life being a typist. So I decided to join the Chinese class at the UN, just for fun, to see what Chinese was like. So it so happened that joining at the same time was a whole bunch of interpreters. So I never knew what interpretation was really, but being with all these guys, they were mostly guys, right? We had a good time. After the Chinese class, we would go for coffee, and one day they said, "Oh, do you want to see how we work?" I said, "Yeah, sure." They took me to their booth, and I saw, how exciting it was to be right in the middle of the action, as I call it. And I said, "Oh, okay, well, that's very good. It's very interesting." And they're seeing how I was fast in the classroom. They said, "Oh, why don't you try to be an interpreter?" I said, "Well, how does one do that?" And first of all, you need a university degree. I didn't have one. And then you needed a third language. Because in the UN to be an interpreter, you work in your mother tongue. Like I always work as a French interpreter in the French booth. But you have to work from two what's called passive languages. So I had English, obviously. My English was fluent. But I didn't have another language. So there was a little bit of a handicap for a UN interpreter. So then I thought, if I do nothing, I would stay a typist all my life. But if I do something, even if it takes me 10 years, I'll get somewhere. Okay, I need a university degree, so I signed on at Hunter College for, to get my BA. But because I had a baccalaureate in France and 2 years of secretarial school, they gave me some, credits. I already got half the credits for the BA. So I signed on for more Spanish class, everything, and make a long story short. And I got my BA from Hunter College. Then I met nice friends, and they were all going to the MA. So, okay, I went with them, I got an MA. And then when it was, they all went for the PhD because they were teachers. And if you teach in the New York school system, if you have a PhD, you get more money. So I said, okay, goodbye. And I said, well, why aren't you coming with us? We had such a good time in the classes, BA, MA, you've got to come. And I said, well, I don't need a PhD. It doesn't matter, come. So I went with them. So that was the part, getting a PhD. Now, back at the ranch, I was taking all kind of classes with Spanish because I needed, to bring my Spanish up to the level. But the best training to become an interpreter was the fact that when I was in the typing pool, typing all day long UN documents, I really acquired all the vocabulary, all the UN vocabulary in French that you needed. I worked on UN document, I practiced on my own with tape recorder and everything. And then one day I felt ready to take the interpreter's exam. I took it, and that's how, to answer your question a long way around, but that's how I became a UN interpreter. But I'm not, I'm not a good example in the sense that most of the interpreters, either they came from a bilingual background, growing up in their family with 2 or 3 languages, and then they applied and they took the exam, or they went to, most of them, to interpreter school. Like a good one is in Geneva. There's a very famous interpretation school in Geneva. There's a couple in England. There used to be one in, where was it, in Washington. I forgot the name of it. Now it doesn't exist. And in the States, there were only 2. One in Monterey, in California. The language school in Monterey has a department of interpretation. And I know that because I went to teach there at some point, but that's another story. Well, as an interpreter, yes. Very exciting, especially at first. You panic. The adrenaline is flowing. You just... and then with experience, you relax a bit, but you never totally relax, No, it was very exciting, especially after I got some experience. At first, they put you in what I call low-level meetings, like drafting committee or little discussion. But then when you graduate to, you get promoted and everything. At some point, I was the head of the French booth too. Then you get to do the Security Council, which is the most interesting meeting in the UN. Basically, it's with the events, up to date, and you read in the paper, you prepare, and so that, yeah, it was always exciting. So we always work in two, right, in the booth. And for French, Spanish, and English, you work with, for instance, you have to have two passive languages. So I have Spanish and English, and I work into French only, my mother tongue. And my colleague has to have Russian and English into French. So that's how we divide the work. But we work by a half hour because it's very tiring, frankly. So you do the first half hour and your colleague takes the second half hour. And also, for instance, if during your half hour there is some Russian, I don't do Russian, and if my colleague is out for coffee or something, then what you do, you relay from the English booth. So you flip a button and the English booth is doing Russian into English, and then I would do the Russian done into English, I would do it into French. We do some relay. So that's how we work it out.
Have you seen any changes in the industry due to AI?
Well, that's a big changes. Now, what's happened? How could I explain this whole thing? I tried it myself to see the quality of translation made by this artificial intelligence. And, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago when they started, remember we used to dictate, it came out in French, and it was laughable. I remember, it was absolutely laughable, totally not proper, just a few sentences. But now, when I tried it, just by curiosity to see, I received a speech once of, forgot, the French ambassador. I put it in AI. The system, the best one I think is called DeepL. You heard about DeepL, right? And I compared both. It was perfect. It was one word I had to change. It was absolutely perfect. So now it's official at the UN, but at the UN New York, because at the UN Geneva, they don't want to allow artificial intelligence to replace translation or interpretation. But in New York, they got the official word that yes, you can do it. That's fine. You can run a speech when you receive it through this translation system. And then so people said, okay, fine, it's going to make life easier, right? But what was behind this whole calculation was, now the machine does the translation, so you don't get your brain to work so hard, therefore you can do more meeting. And the rule I told you when we started was 7 meetings a week. Now officially they went up to 8 meetings a week as last April. That's one thing. Now they're cutting posts. When people retire, the post is cut. They don't rehire anybody, they cut. They cut posts right, left, and center. They don't fire people. They offer the good scheme of early retirement, with what's called a golden parachute, right? People could retire now with their full pension and $100,000. So they would give up the post, and that would make for savings in the future. Except that when they offered that scheme about a year and a half ago, they didn't expect so many people to apply. Like over 900 people applied. So it's not only the end of the profession because the AI is taking over, but it's also the quality is not what it used to be, Oh, it affects job very, very much so. Now I understand that some people who used to be recruited as editors at the UN, I think the job has a different name now. They recruited not to edit some UN documents, but to proofread what the AI has edited. So some job is disappearing, and people who are on the freelance market for translation, for instance, it's all done. I had a friend who wrote a book in French, and I said, I thought it would be a good project for me to translate it with Stephen into English, I said, well, wouldn't you like your book to be translated into English? She said, oh, yeah, sure. She said, oh, I ran it through the AI and it's pretty good. I just proofread it and it's fine, you know. And other people who used to, official translators on the freelance market in Paris, for instance, they don't find any more jobs because the all translation is done through, and it has to be proofread, of course, but it's a totally different job market, and then it's not the same money. You know, they don't have to pay interpreters or translator a whole lot of money. It's just somebody who proofreads and revises what has been done artificially. How do I feel about these changes? Well, I don't know. Well, I feel bad in the sense that, you know, I don't have, but I feel even worse for all these youngsters coming out of interpreter school because they still, you know, prepare them and everything. They're on the freelance market, and the UN is not recruiting. So all these people, I don't know what will happen. But on the other hand, you have to admire the new technology and what it is able to do. You know, we have to see up to where it's going to go. It's kind of scary in a way. It's good, but well, as you know, the cliche is the human touch is being lost in a way. I don't know. You have to balance, you know, what's lost and what has been gained. And I think basically the balance is more for what has been gained with all this. Yeah, it's not the same. You don't have the contact with the people the same way. But what do I think has been gained?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's faster. It's faster. It's quicker. Sometimes it's more rational. You know, it depends what kind of things you use AI for. But you know, I would say on a whole, it's better.
How so?
Well, also I learned something because I have a friend who does that. You know, there's a whole new industry. I think the firm in charge of that is called Outlier. Have you heard of that? It's what they do. They recruit people to teach AI to make sure it gets better and better. You know, like they give a little problem to AI and to a real person, and they compare the results. So I think it's really trying to get better. Is it going to be perfect one day? Might be. Who knows?